bud, pot, ganja, reefer, weed, marijuana. Throughout its time, this plant has been used as a building material, a drug, and medicine. It has been the reason for hundreds of thousands of people's incarcerations over the years. This plant has been a hot-button issue for a little over a century. Over this time, the issues surrounding marijuana have been primarily focused on societal opinions, U.S. domestic policy, international policy, effects of legalization, health risks, and representation in the media. Ever since the 1600s, marijuana has been prevalent in society. From the 1600s through the 1890s, production of hemp products was encouraged because hemp was readily available and useful. However, in the early 1900s, Mexican immigrants came to the United States and introduced recreational usage of marijuana. Americans began to associate marijuana with the Mexican immigrants and the negative stereotypes against them. They began to dislike marijuana, and thus the Federal Bureau of Narcotics was created in 1930. As the 30s progressed, more and more people began to resent marijuana, and as a result, 29 states outlawed marijuana by 1931. In 1936, the anti-marijuana propaganda film Reefer Madness was released. This was a scare tactic used to further demonize marijuana. However, in 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act was passed, which allowed people to use marijuana only for certain uses and only if they paid the very heavy tax associated with it. During World War II and the 1940s, the Hemp for Victory movement started, which encouraged and gave draft deferments to farmers who stayed home and grew hemp for the military. From 1951 to 56, the sentencing laws surrounding marijuana became much more strict with the Boggs Act of 1952 and the Narcotics Control Act of 1956. During the 60s, recreational marijuana was very popular in the hippie counterculture. The increased use of marijuana led to the repeal of most minimum sentences in 1970 under the argument that they were far too strict and overall ineffective. In the same year, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, or NORML, was founded. This group would and still is advocating for marijuana rights in the United States. In 1973, the Drug Enforcement Administration was created to combat drug trafficking. In 1974, High Times was founded, a magazine and news outlet centered on marijuana culture and facts about it. High Times definitely had a positive bias towards marijuana. In 1986, the Anti-Drug Abuse Act was passed, and in 1989, President Bush declared a national war on drugs. However, this war has been and is widely regarded as a failure. In 1996, California passed Proposition 215, which legalized medical marijuana in the state. However, in 2005, the Supreme Court upheld the federal government's right to ban marijuana. In 2012, Washington and Colorado allowed recreational use of marijuana, and in 2013, the Justice Department officially declared that it would not interfere with state laws regarding marijuana.
The laws against marijuana are loosening in the United States, but there are some countries with stricter laws and some that are much farther along in the process of making it a common household item. Do not try and smoke in the United Arab Emirates. Any sort of drug use, possession, or trafficking will result in capital punishment. This is also true in Saudi Arabia, where they punish drug traffickers with a public beheading, the same punishment they use for murderers and rapists. Those who possess or use drugs, such as marijuana, are punished with harsh jail sentences and public flogging. Vietnam does not put marijuana and other drug users to death, but they send them to forced rehabilitation centers. These centers are nothing like those in the United States. They do not actually offer any chance for people to receive treatment or change their ways. They are tortured, experience harsh labor, and very harsh discipline. Looking at these countries' laws would make any pot smoker grateful to live in the United States. But there are some whose laws are much more lax than ours. The San Diego Free Press listed many of these countries in 2014. Surprisingly, the Netherlands has not yet legalized it. It might as well be legalized, however, because people smoke openly on the streets without repercussions. The police are very tolerant, and possession of small amounts is decriminalized. Amsterdam is known for its legendary coffee shops that are licensed to sell weed. The buyers are carded, and there is a limit to the amount that you can buy, 5 grams, but this law is also very loosely enforced. Spain, on the other hand, legalized personal marijuana use decades ago. Barcelona is now challenging Amsterdam as the central location for marijuana tourism. Anyone can grow the plants for personal use and can form nonprofit, members-only cannabis clubs. Canada does things a little differently. Recreational marijuana is still illegal throughout the country, but it has a nationwide, corporatized, government-sanctioned medical marijuana program. Around 20 companies are licensed to mass produce for that purpose. One of these corporations even uses an old Hershey's chocolate factory for production. This has created an immense economic boost. And the same thing would almost certainly be true if marijuana was legalized in the United States. A study showed that it would create thousands of jobs and generate billions in additional tax revenue, according to the Huffington Post. Colorado's annual tax revenues are about 67 million, while Washington's are about 580 million in just the first 2 years. It is estimated that it will generate anywhere from 5.5 to 8.7 billion dollars annually across the United States. The researchers there found this number by assuming that legalized marijuana would be taxed similarly to alcohol and tobacco. They also reasoned that pot producers' income would be about the standard income and sales tax. State and local governments would also save billions of dollars that they spend regulating the use of marijuana, and U.S. prisons would save about $1 billion that is used to pay for inmates incarcerated on marijuana-related charges.
In the fight to legalize marijuana, activists often compare the effects that it has on the body to alcohol and tobacco. For example, 1 in 12 adults in the United States is addicted to alcohol, while physical marijuana addiction is not yet fully understood or even proven to exist. In terms of intoxicated driving, marijuana has only been proven to have a slight impact on psychomotor driving skills, while alcohol consumption severely impacts one's ability to operate a vehicle. In fact, one person is killed each hour in the United States because of drunk driving. Alcohol poisoning is also a much more frequent problem than overuse of marijuana. There are 88,000 deaths each year that are attributed to excessive alcohol use, while studies show that a person can consume 30% of their body weight of marijuana without overdosing. To put that in perspective, that's a 160-pound person consuming 48 pounds of weed. In terms of comparing pot smoking to cigarette smoking, the death tolls are dramatically different. Cigarettes account for 443,000 deaths each year by causing serious lung problems, including cancer. According to a study done by the Coronary Artery Risk Development in Young Adults conducted in 4 major U.S. cities from 1985 to 2006, airflow rate and lung capacity was greatly reduced in cigarette smokers. Pot smokers, on the other hand, saw these two factors slightly improve over this period of 21 years. Heavy pot smoking, however, may take a toll on the lungs, but that risk is less than the normal cigarette usage, and the amount of marijuana that must be consumed to do significant damage is greater than the amount that most pot users ingest. The media often portrays marijuana users to be stoners. Often they are unmotivated people without much going for them in their lives. But this goes against reality. Over 50% of American adults, according to a study done by Alternet, have admitted to smoking pot at least once. Half of the adult population clearly is not reflected accurately in TV shows and movies like Half-Baked, Pineapple Express, That 70s Show, and countless others, which depict stereotypical potheads. It isn't possible that so many millions of people are the lazy, snack-eating freeloaders that are so often tied together with marijuana. The media also does not show people in pain, who smoke weed for medical purposes. Those who are recovering from chemotherapy, have multiple sclerosis, or have poor appetite and weight loss caused by HIV or chronic nerve pain are often users of marijuana that get overlooked by the general public. Because of the way that popular media has depicted pot users, many people are against marijuana use altogether, but do not understand that it is used by millions of different people for just as many reasons.
Currently, 23 states and Washington, D.C. have decriminalized marijuana, legalized recreational uses of marijuana, or have allowed medical use of marijuana, and the overall trend is moving more and more towards further legalization.
The domestic policy, societal opinions, international policies, effects of legalization, health risks, and representation in the media paint a clear picture of this controversy through the years. There have been many changes made and it is becoming much more widely accepted. People recognize the health risks attributed to marijuana usage, but it is becoming clearer after the first 2 states legalized that the economic benefits outweigh these risks.